Disclaimer: this is a fictional dramatization created for artistic, emotional, and educational storytelling purposes. All characters and events are entirely fictional and created using AI tools. No impersonation, misrepresentation, or harm is intended. The content contains scenes of danger involving child characters. However, no real persons or minors were involved in its production. Grace's Love Stories produces scripted, AI-generated stories that promote, entertain, inspire kindness, and emotional connection. We respect our viewers and strictly adhere to YouTube's policies.
The grand hall smelled of incense and desperation. Thick, cloying smoke that clung to the stone walls and settled in my lungs like a prayer no one believed anymore. I stood at the very back, pressed against the cold pillar where shadows gathered, watching as the 1,000 healers filed past the dais in their ceremonial robes. Each one touched the Alpha King's still chest, murmured their incantations, and turned away with defeated eyes. He was dead. Everyone said so. I shouldn't have been here at all. Omegas weren't invited to royal death vigils, especially not rejected ones, especially not me. But I'd slipped in through the servants' entrance before dawn, driven by something I couldn't name. Curiosity, maybe, or the cruel need to see with my own eyes that the man who'd ruled our kingdom with iron and fire had finally fallen. The healer's footsteps echoed like a funeral march. I counted them as they passed. 50, 100, 200. Each declaration of death felt like another nail in a coffin. I hadn't realized I was building around my own heart. The air grew heavier with each failure, pressing down on my shoulders until I wanted to run, to escape back to the kitchens where I belonged, where no one looked at me twice. My hair, pale as winter wheat, my mother used to say before she died, hung loose around my face. I'd braided it this morning, but the humidity from all those bodies had pulled the strands free. I tucked them behind my ears with trembling fingers, making myself smaller, invisible. That's what I'd learned to be, invisible. 3 years ago, I'd stood before the Council of Alphas during the matching ceremony, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst through my ribs. I was 17 then, barely of age, wearing a borrowed dress that didn't fit right. When the council elder had called my name and asked if any alpha would claim me as mate, the silence had been deafening. Not one hand raised, not one voice spoke. The rejection wasn't just personal. It was public, witnessed by everyone who mattered. I'd walked out of that hall with my head high and my soul shattered, and I'd never stopped walking until I'd found work in the palace kitchens, scrubbing pots and chopping vegetables, and pretending I didn't hear the whispers that followed me everywhere. The unclaimed Omega. Too weak, even for the lowest alpha. What's wrong with her that no one wanted her? Now, standing in the death chamber of the Alpha King himself, I wondered what cosmic joke had brought me here. Sebastian Thornhart, the name alone commanded reverence and fear, lay motionless on the raised platform, his massive body draped in ceremonial furs. Even in death, he looked powerful. His face, carved from granite and shadow, held an expression of eternal fierceness. Dark hair fell across his forehead, and his hands, folded across his chest, bore scars from 1,000 battles. He'd never noticed me. Why would he? I was nothing. No one. A ghost in his palace. The 500th healer approached, an elderly woman whose reputation preceded her. If anyone could wake him, it would be her. She placed both palms over his heart, closed her eyes, and began to chant in the old language, words that predated our kingdom, that reached back into the wild magic our ancestors had wielded. Nothing. She stepped back, shaking her head, and I saw tears on her weathered cheeks. My chest tightened. I didn't know why it mattered. The Alpha King had been a distant figure, more myth than man. He'd ruled for 15 years with absolute authority, had expanded our territory, had kept the rival packs at bay. But he'd also been cold, unapproachable, surrounded by advisors and warriors who spoke in his name because he rarely spoke himself. 3 days ago, he'd collapsed during a council meeting. No wound, no poison, just a sudden stillness, as if his soul had simply decided to leave. The healers said it was an ancient curse, something buried deep in his bloodline that finally claimed him. Others whispered about dark magic, about enemies within the palace walls. I watched as the 600th healer tried and failed, then the 700th, the 800th. With each failure, the murmurs grew louder. The council members, standing in their appointed places around the dais, began to exchange glances. I recognized Magnus, the head of the council, his silver beard braided with authority. Beside him stood Commander Rowan, the king's closest friend, his face a mask of stone that couldn't quite hide the grief beneath. And there, in the corner nearest the throne, lurked Dominic Ashford, the king's cousin and next in line. He didn't look grief-stricken. He looked hungry. I'd seen that look before, in the eyes of the alphas who'd passed me by during the matching ceremony, in the faces of those who took pleasure in others' pain. It made my skin crawl. The 900th healer finished her attempt, then the 950th. By the time the final healer approached, a young man barely older than me, his hands shaking as he touched the king's chest. The room had descended into a strange, suffocating quiet. Everyone knew. This was the end. When this healer declared death, it would become official, irrevocable. The young healer tried his magic. I watched the faint glow of his power flicker and die against the king's unmoving chest. He withdrew his hands, looked at Magnus, and spoke the words everyone had been dreading. He's gone. The Alpha King is dead. The declaration rippled through the hall like a stone thrown into still water. Some people gasped. Others bowed their heads. Magnus raised his hand, preparing to make the formal announcement that would change everything, but I couldn't stop staring at the king's face. There was something wrong. Not wrong like death, wrong like absence. Like his body was there, but empty. Waiting. I'd felt something similar once before, when I was a child, and found an injured wolf in the forest. Everyone said to leave it, that it was too far gone, but I'd sat beside it anyway, humming the songs my mother used to sing. And it had opened its eyes. My feet moved before my mind caught up. I stepped out from behind the pillar into the light. Heads turned. I heard someone say, "Who is that?" Another voice. "It's just a kitchen Omega. Just a kitchen Omega." The word should have stopped me, should have sent me scurrying back to the shadows. But something pulled me forward, not courage, exactly, more like an inevitability, as if I'd been walking toward this moment my entire life and only now realized it. "Stop!" Magnus's voice boomed across the hall. "This is a sacred ceremony. No unauthorized personnel, please." My voice came out smaller than I intended, but it carried in the sudden silence. "Just let me try." Laughter. Sharp, cruel laughter from somewhere in the crowd. I felt my cheeks burn, but I kept walking, kept moving toward the dais where the Alpha King lay in his eternal sleep. Commander Rowan stepped in front of me, blocking my path. He was enormous, all muscle and scars, with eyes that had seen too much death. "You need to leave," he said, not unkindly. "This isn't a place for you. I know." I met his gaze, though it took everything I had. But what if there's a chance? What if— 1,000 healers have declared him dead, Dominic interrupted, his smooth voice cutting through my words like a knife. He moved closer, his expensive robes rustling. What could a rejected Omega possibly do that they could not? The emphasis on rejected was deliberate, a reminder of my place, my worthlessness. I could have walked away then, should have. But I thought about that wolf in the forest, about the songs my mother taught me, about all the times I'd been told I was nothing and had almost believed it. "I don't know," I said honestly, looking at Dominic. "But I'm here, and he's there. And what's the harm in trying?" "The harm," Magnus said coldly, "is in disrespecting our traditions with this circus. Let her try." Commander Rowan's words shocked everyone into silence. He was still standing in front of me, but now he was looking back at the king's body with an expression I couldn't read. 1,000 healers have failed. If she fails too, nothing changes. But if there's even the smallest possibility— He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Magnus looked like he'd swallowed poison, but he couldn't argue with the king's closest friend. He waved his hand dismissively. "Fine. Let the Omega make a fool of herself. It changes nothing." Rowan stepped aside, and suddenly there was nothing between me and the dais except empty space and my own thundering heartbeat. I climbed the 3 steps slowly, aware of every eye on me, every whisper following my movement. The king looked even more intimidating up close. His body was massive, his presence overwhelming even in stillness. I knelt beside him, my pale hair falling forward to curtain us both. This close, I could see the faint scars on his jaw, the silver threading through his dark hair at the temples. He smelled like pine and steel, and something wild I couldn't name. I didn't know what to do. I wasn't a healer. I had no magic, no special gifts. I was just an Omega who'd somehow stumbled into a moment too big for her. But I remembered my mother's voice. Sometimes the smallest kindness can wake what magic cannot reach. So I did the only thing I knew how to do. I leaned down, closed my eyes, and pressed my lips gently to his. The world exploded. Not literally, though for a heartbeat, I thought the palace itself might crack apart from the force of what happened. The moment my lips touched his, energy surged through me like lightning finding ground. It wasn't painful, exactly, but it was overwhelming. A rush of power and life, and something ancient that made my bones vibrate and my vision blur white at the edges. I jerked back, gasping, my hands flying to my chest as if I could contain the wild beating of my heart. Beneath me, the Alpha King's eyes snapped open. They were gold. Pure, molten gold, like the sun captured and concentrated into irises that seemed to look straight through me into whatever lay beyond. For a moment, those eyes were unfocused, confused, as if he was remembering how to exist. Then they sharpened, found me, and the world tilted. He sat up in one fluid motion, powerful and sudden, and I scrambled backward so fast I nearly fell off the dais. His hand shot out, not to catch me but to steady himself against the platform, and I watched the muscles in his arms tense as he oriented himself. "What?" His voice was rough, unused, like gravel grinding together. He looked around the hall, taking in the 1,000 healers, the council members, the stunned silence that had fallen like snow. Then his gaze returned to me, kneeling there with my hair wild and my lips still tingling. "Who are you?" I couldn't speak. My throat had closed completely. Around us, chaos erupted. "Impossible!" Magnus's voice rose above the others. "He was dead. I felt no pulse, no breath. The Omega did it," someone whispered, and the whisper became a wave, spreading through the hall like wildfire. She woke him. The rejected Omega woke the king. Commander Rowan was at the dais in 3 strides, his weathered face split by a grin I suspected was rare. "Sebastian," he said, and there was so much relief in that single word it almost hurt to hear. "We thought we'd lost you. How long?" The king's eyes never left me, even as he addressed Rowan. There was something in his expression I couldn't read. Confusion, yes, but also recognition, as if he knew me from somewhere though we'd never spoken. 3 days. "You collapsed during the council meeting. Every healer in the kingdom declared you beyond reach." Rowan glanced at me, and I saw something like wonder in his eyes. Until her. Sebastian Thornhart rose to his full height, and I was reminded viscerally why alphas inspired such awe. He stood at least a head taller than Rowan, his body radiating a power that seemed barely contained by flesh. The ceremonial furs fell away, revealing the simple dark clothing beneath, and even that couldn't diminish his presence. He extended his hand toward me. "Stand." It wasn't a request. My legs shook as I obeyed, and when I took his hand to steady myself, the contact sent another jolt through me, smaller this time, but no less intense. His skin was warm, calloused, rough from years of wielding weapons. My hand looked absurdly small in his. "Your name," he said. "Elena." It came out barely above a whisper. I cleared my throat, tried again. "Elena Winters. I work in the kitchens." Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or disappointment. He'd probably expected someone important, someone with a title or lineage worth noting. Instead, he got a kitchen worker with pale hair and no prospects. He released my hand, but slowly, as if testing whether I'd disappear if he let go too quickly. "You have my gratitude, Elena Winters." The formal words should have been the end of it. He should have turned away, attended to his counsel, reclaimed his throne. Instead, he stood there, studying me with those unsettling gold eyes, and I felt stripped bare under that gaze. "This is unprecedented." Dominic's voice cut through the moment, smooth and poisonous. He'd moved closer to the dais, his handsome face arranged in careful concern. "Sebastian, you should rest. The healers need to examine you, understand what happened." "I know what happened." Sebastian's voice was cold now, edged with something dangerous. He finally looked away from me, fixing Dominic with a stare that could have frozen fire. "I was cursed. Someone in this palace wanted me dead." The hall went silent again, but this time the silence was sharp, afraid. "Cursed?" Magnus stepped forward, his silver beard quivering with indignation. "That's a serious accusation, Your Majesty." "Do you have proof?" "I have memory." Sebastian descended from the dais, and the crowd parted before him like water before a blade. I was aware, trapped inside my own body, watching as each healer tried and failed. I felt the curse, old magic, dark magic, woven into my bloodline and triggered 3 days ago. He paused, turned back to look at me, and I felt it break the moment she touched me. My knees went weak. This couldn't be happening. I was nobody. Nothing. I couldn't break curses that stumped 1,000 healers. Perhaps the curse simply ran its course, Dominic suggested. But there was something off in his tone now, something brittle. The timing was coincidental. There are no coincidences. Commander Rowan's hand rested on his sword hilt, a gesture that made several council members step back. Someone cursed the king. That same someone is likely in this room, watching their plans crumble. I saw fear ripple through the assembled crowd. Heads turned, eyes narrowed with suspicion. The celebration of the king's return was already souring into paranoia. Sebastian raised his hand, commanding silence with a simple gesture. "Rowan, increase security. Magnus, I want every person who had access to the council chamber 3 days ago identified and questioned." "Gently," he added, though the words sounded like a threat. "We don't know who we're looking for yet." "Your Majesty," Magnus bowed, but I caught the flash of resentment in his eyes before he lowered them. "It shall be done, and Elena Winters will be moved to the royal wing," Sebastian continued, as if announcing what we'd have for dinner. "Under guard. For her protection." My heart stopped. "What? No. I can't. I'm just—" "You broke a curse that should have killed me." He looked at me again, and this time I saw the calculation behind those gold eyes that makes you either incredibly powerful or incredibly important. Either way, until I understand why you succeeded where thousands failed, you stay where I can keep you safe. Safe. The word should have been comforting. Instead, it felt like a cage door closing. "I don't have power," I said desperately, aware of how pathetic I sounded. "I'm an Omega, a rejected one. I work in the kitchens because no Alpha would claim me. I'm not special." Something shifted in his expression. Not pity exactly, but something close to it. "You woke me from death itself, Elena. That's as special as it gets." Before I could protest further, he turned to address the hall. "Let it be known that the Alpha King lives. The death vigil is concluded. Return to your duties and await further instruction." The dismissal was absolute. People began to file out, their voices rising in excited chatter the moment they passed through the doors. I caught fragments of conversation. Rejected Omega, impossible, dark magic, true mate, and each phrase felt like a brand against my skin. Within minutes, the hall had emptied except for Sebastian, Rowan, Magnus, Dominic, and me. And the guards, of course, standing at attention along the walls. "This is insane," I said, finding my voice. "You can't just move me to the royal wing. People will talk, they'll think." "They'll think what they always think," Sebastian interrupted. "Let them. Right now, keeping you close is more important than managing gossip." "Why?" The question burst out of me. "Why do you care what happens to a kitchen worker?" He stepped closer, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. This close, I could see the faint lines around his eyes, the stern set of his mouth, the absolute certainty in his gaze. Because someone tried to kill me using a curse that shouldn't exist anymore, he said quietly. And you, an unclaimed Omega with no training, no power, no apparent connection to me, broke it with a kiss. That suggests things I don't yet understand. Until I do, you're not safe in the kitchens where anyone could reach you. His words made a horrible kind of sense. If I'd broken the curse, whoever cast it might see me as a threat, might want me silenced. The thought made my blood run cold. I'll have rooms prepared, Rowan said, practical as always. He looked at me with something approaching respect. You'll need clothes, personal items. I don't have personal items, I said flatly. Everything I own fits in a single drawer. The admission hung in the air, heavy with implications about my life, my status, my complete lack of resources. I waited for the judgment, the dismissal. Instead, Sebastian just nodded. Then we'll provide what you need, Rowan. Assign 2 guards, female if possible. I don't want her feeling more uncomfortable than necessary. Your Majesty. Rowan bowed and strode away, already shouting orders. Magnus cleared his throat. If I may, Your Majesty, the council will need to convene immediately. There are questions about succession, about the curse, about... Tomorrow, Sebastian cut him off. Today, I've returned from the dead. I think I've earned a few hours to recover. Magnus looked like he wanted to argue, but even he wasn't foolish enough to push. He bowed stiffly and retreated, leaving just Sebastian, Dominic, and me. Dominic hadn't moved from his position near the throne. Now he smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Cousin, I'm relieved beyond words to see you well. When the healers declared you gone, I feared for our kingdom. Of course you did. Sebastian's tone was neutral, but I caught the edge beneath it. Go make sure the transition back to normalcy runs smoothly. I'm sure there are many who need reassurance. It was a dismissal wrapped in courtesy. Dominic's smile tightened, but he bowed. Of course. And Miss Winters, he added, turning those cold eyes on me. Congratulations on your miraculous success. The way he said it made it sound like an accusation. Then he was gone, and I was alone with the Alpha King in the vast empty hall. Sebastian exhaled slowly, and for the first time, I saw the exhaustion beneath his controlled exterior. He moved to the throne but didn't sit, just leaned against it as if he needed the support. You should rest, I said, surprising myself with my boldness. You've been gone for 3 days. Your body needs time to adjust. He looked at me with something that might have been amusement. Are you giving me orders, Elena Winters? I'm giving you common sense. The words came easier now that we were alone. You're about to collapse. I can see it. And when you do, I don't think another kiss is going to wake you up. His lips twitched, almost a smile. Fair enough. He pushed off from the throne but swayed slightly. An instinct drove me forward to steady him. The moment I touched his arm, that current passed between us again. Not as strong as before, but present, undeniable. He felt it too. I saw his eyes widen slightly, saw him look down at where my hand rested against his sleeve. What is this? He murmured, and I wasn't sure if he was asking me or himself. I don't know, I whispered back. I've never felt anything like it. We stood there, frozen in that strange moment of connection, and I realized with startling clarity that everything had changed. 3 hours ago, I'd been invisible. Now I was standing in the throne room, touching the Alpha King, feeling something I had no name for. Rowan returned with 2 female guards, breaking the spell. Sebastian stepped back, his face sliding back into that mask of control. Elena will be in the Rose Suite, he told Rowan. Make sure she has everything she needs. The Rose Suite? Rowan's eyebrows rose. That's next to my chambers, where I can ensure her safety. Sebastian's tone brooked no argument. I wanted to protest, to say this was too much, too fast, too everything. But looking at his face, the determination there, the protectiveness that seemed to have sprung up out of nowhere, I realized arguing was pointless. Come, one of the guards said gently. She was older, with kind eyes. Let's get you settled. I followed them out, but not before glancing back one last time. Sebastian stood in the center of the throne room, watching me leave, and the expression on his face was so complex I couldn't begin to unravel it. By the time we reached the Rose Suite, my head was spinning. The rooms were larger than the entire servants' quarters combined. There was a bedroom with a bed big enough for 5 people, a sitting area with windows overlooking the gardens, and a bathroom with an actual tub built into the floor. This can't be real, I breathed. The kind-eyed guard, she'd introduced herself as Captain Thea, smiled. It's real. And it's yours. His Majesty's orders. As I stood in that beautiful, impossible room, watching the sunset paint the walls gold, I realized that my old life had ended the moment my lips touched the king's. Whatever came next, there was no going back. I didn't sleep that first night. How could I? The bed was too soft, the room too quiet, and my mind wouldn't stop replaying everything that had happened. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt that surge of energy again. Saw those gold eyes opening, felt the weight of 1,000 stares pressing down on me like stones. By the time dawn crept through the windows, painting the rose-colored walls in shades of amber and pink, I'd given up on rest entirely. I stood at the window, watching the palace grounds wake up. Gardeners tending the hedges, guards changing shifts, servants hurrying between buildings with baskets and bundles. My people. Or they had been, until yesterday. A knock at the door made me jump. Captain Thea entered without waiting for permission, carrying a tray laden with more food than I typically ate in a week. Behind her came 3 other women, arms full of fabric. "Breakfast," Thea announced, setting the tray on the low table. "And the seamstresses, to fit you for proper clothing." "I have clothing," I protested weakly, gesturing to my simple kitchen dress. "You have servants' clothing." This came from the oldest seamstress, a sharp-eyed woman who looked me up and down with professional assessment. "You're housed in the royal wing now. You need attire that reflects your new position." "I don't have a position. I'm just—" "The woman who woke the king," Thea interrupted gently. "That's position enough." The next 2 hours were a blur of measurements and fabric samples and instructions to stand still, turn around, lift your arms. The seamstresses worked with efficient precision, discussing hemlines and necklines as if I wasn't there. Through it all, I picked at the breakfast, managing only a few bites despite the food being better than anything I'd tasted in years. When they finally left, promising to return by evening with completed garments, I felt exhausted despite having done nothing but stand there. "His Majesty requests your presence in his study," Thea said. "When you're ready." My stomach dropped. "Now?" "At your convenience," she smiled. "Though I wouldn't wait too long. The king isn't known for his patience." She left me alone to prepare, and I stared at my reflection in the full-length mirror, another luxury I'd never had before. My pale hair was a tangled mess, my kitchen dress rumpled from a sleepless night. I looked exactly like what I was, an imposter in a world that didn't want her. I did what I could, braided my hair, washed my face, straightened my dress, and followed Thea's directions to the king's study. The walk took me deeper into the royal wing, through corridors I'd only glimpsed while carrying laundry or delivering meals to the higher servants. Everything here was richer, more ornate. Tapestries depicting ancient battles, weapons mounted on walls, portraits of past rulers whose eyes seemed to follow me as I passed. 2 guards stood outside a heavy oak door. They nodded to me, actually nodded with respect, and opened it without question. The study was exactly what I'd expected. Shelves crammed with books and scrolls, a massive desk covered in maps and documents, weapons displayed above a cold fireplace. What I hadn't expected was the tension in the room. Sebastian stood behind his desk, still wearing the same dark clothing from yesterday. He looked more rested, but no less formidable. Commander Rowan stood to his right, arms crossed, and across from them, looking distinctly uncomfortable, was Magnus. "Elena." Sebastian's voice was formal, distant. "Thank you for coming. Please sit." He gestured to a chair positioned slightly apart from the others. I sat, feeling like I was about to be judged for crimes I didn't understand. "We've been discussing the curse," Sebastian continued, his gold eyes fixed on me with uncomfortable intensity, "and we've reached several concerning conclusions. I waited, my hands twisted together in my lap. The curse was blood magic, Rowan said bluntly. Old, dark, and extremely specific. It required something personal from Sebastian. Hair, blood, a possession. And it required knowledge of his bloodline going back generations. Which means, Sebastian picked up the thread, it was cast by someone with access to both me personally and the royal archives. Someone inside the palace. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Furthermore, Magnus added, his voice tight, the fact that you broke it suggests a connection we don't understand. Blood magic doesn't break from random intervention. There has to be a reason. All three men looked at me expectantly, as if I held answers I'd been hiding. I don't know anything about blood magic, I said helplessly. I don't know about any magic. I'm just an Omega, Sebastian finished. So you keep saying, but here's what troubles me, Elena. Omega genetics are rare. 1 in every 1,000 births, maybe less. And yet despite that rarity, you were rejected at the matching ceremony. Why? The question struck like a physical blow. I'd asked myself the same thing 1,000 times in the 3 years since, had tortured myself with possibilities. Too weak. Too plain. Too nothing. I don't know, I whispered. I think you do. Sebastian moved around the desk, closing the distance between us. Or at least someone knew. Someone saw something in you that made them ensure no alpha would claim you. My head snapped up. What? The matching ceremony is sacred, Rowan explained. Alphas are driven by instinct to claim compatible omegas. The fact that not one alpha responded to you suggests outside interference. That's insane. I stood abruptly, the chair scraping against stone. Why would anyone interfere with my matching? I'm nobody. I have no family, no wealth, no known lineage, Magnus interrupted. Which is precisely the problem. Your mother died when you were young, yes? And your father was unknown? I nodded, not trusting my voice. We checked the birth records last night, Sebastian said quietly. Your mother's name was listed, but there's no information about her origins. She appeared in the capital 17 years before you were born, worked as a seamstress, and kept to herself. When you were born, she registered you without naming a father. When she died 8 years later, she was buried in the common grave with no ceremony. Each fact was a small violence, a reminder of how little I'd mattered to the world. What are you saying? I asked, though part of me already knew, already feared the answer. I'm saying your mother was hiding something, Sebastian replied. And I think that something is you, your true lineage, your real heritage, whatever it is that allowed you to break a blood curse that should have been unbreakable. The room spun. I gripped the back of the chair to steady myself. I'm just an Omega, just Elena. No. Sebastian's voice was firm but not unkind. You're more than that, and whoever cursed me knows it. That's why you're in danger. Then send me away. The words burst out desperately. Let me leave the palace, disappear into the countryside. If I'm not here, they'll hunt you down. Rowan's blunt assessment cut through my panic. You think breaking that curse went unnoticed? By now, every pack with dark magic connections knows what happened. You're either an asset or a threat, and either way, you're valuable. I don't want to be valuable, I said. And my voice broke on the words, I want to be invisible again, safe. Sebastian's expression softened almost imperceptibly. I know. But that option is gone. So now we focus on keeping you alive and figuring out what you are. And how do we do that? I asked bitterly. We start with what we know. Magnus pulled a leather-bound book from the shelf, its pages yellow with age. There are only 3 types of magic that can break blood curses. The first is royal magic, which Sebastian doesn't have. Our bloodline lost that gift 4 generations ago. The second is divine intervention, which would require a priest or priestess, and you're neither. And the third? I almost didn't want to know. True mate magic, Sebastian said quietly, the bond between destined pairs. It's rare, almost mythical, but the old texts say it can overcome any curse, any barrier, because it's written into fate itself. The silence that followed was deafening. You're not suggesting... I couldn't finish the sentence. "I'm not suggesting anything," Sebastian said, but his eyes told a different story. "I'm stating facts. The three of us felt the energy when you woke me. That kind of power surge doesn't come from nowhere." "But I was rejected," I said desperately. "At the matching ceremony. If we were true mates, wouldn't you have known? Wouldn't you have claimed me? I wasn't at your matching ceremony." His words were careful, measured. "I was on the northern border, dealing with territorial disputes. I sent Dominic in my place to observe and report. The revelation landed like a thunderclap. Dominic. The cousin who stood to inherit if Sebastian died. The cousin who'd been in the throne room yesterday, watching with those cold, calculating eyes. You think Dominic interfered with my matching," I said slowly, piecing it together. "And then later he cursed you to claim the throne and eliminate any chance of us discovering what you are." Sebastian finished. "Yes, it's a working theory. But that's..." I struggled for words. "That's monstrous. How could he do that? Dominic has always been ambitious." Rowan's voice was hard. "But we have no proof. Not yet. Which is why you need to stay close, stay protected, until we can either prove his guilt or find the real culprit." My legs gave out. I sank back into the chair, my mind reeling. True mates, Dominic, curses and blood magic and destinies I'd never asked for. "I can't be your true mate," I whispered. "Look at me. I'm nothing like what an alpha king needs." Sebastian crouched in front of me, bringing those intense gold eyes level with mine. "What I need," he said quietly, "is someone who'll kiss a dead king on the slim chance it might help. Someone brave enough to step forward when 1,000 healers have failed. Someone who asks what harm could come from trying." His words were so earnest, so unexpected, that I felt tears prick my eyes. "I was terrified," I admitted. "Brave people usually are." He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and tucked a loose strand of pale hair behind my ear. The touch was gentle, almost reverent, and that current passed between us again. Softer now, like a whisper instead of a shout. He felt it. I saw his eyes darken, saw his jaw tighten. "We need to test the theory," Magnus said, oblivious or deliberately ignoring the moment. "There are rituals, old ceremonies that can confirm or deny a true mate bond." "No." Sebastian stood abruptly, and his tone had gone hard again. "No rituals. Not until we understand what we're dealing with. Elena has been through enough without subjecting her to invasive magic." "But your majesty?" I said no. The command in his voice was absolute. "We proceed carefully. We investigate Dominic quietly. We keep Elena safe. And we give her time to adjust to all of this instead of treating her like a puzzle to solve." Magnus looked like he wanted to argue but thought better of it. He bowed stiffly. "As you wish." After Magnus left, the tension in the room eased slightly. Rowan poured 3 glasses of amber liquid from a crystal decanter and handed one to each of us. "You'll need this," he told me. I took a sip and immediately regretted it. The liquor burned down my throat like liquid fire, making me cough. But the warmth that followed was oddly comforting. "What happens now?" I asked when I could breathe again. "Now," Sebastian said, settling into his chair with the weariness of someone carrying impossible weight. "I attend council meetings and pretend I don't suspect my cousin of attempted murder. You adjust to life in the royal wing and try not to let the gossip destroy you. And Rowan investigates everything he can about your mother, the curse, and Dominic's activities 3 days ago. That's simple?" I tried for humor, fell short. "That's simple." He raised his glass in a mock toast. "Welcome to palace life, Elena Winters." Over the next week, I discovered that palace life was infinitely more complicated than kitchen life had ever been. The clothes arrived as promised, beautiful dresses in soft fabrics. Nothing too ornate, but far finer than anything I'd owned. Wearing them felt like playing dress-up in someone else's wardrobe. The stares were worse. Every time I left my rooms, escorted always by Captain Thea or one of her guards, I felt the weight of eyes on me, servants whispered. Nobles watched with open curiosity or thinly veiled disdain. The rumors had spread fast, the rejected Omega who'd woken the king, who now lived in the royal wing, who was either a hero or a charlatan, depending on who you asked. I endured it all because I had no choice. But the loneliness was crushing. Then, 9 days after I'd woken Sebastian, everything changed again. I was in the library, a place I'd discovered accidentally and immediately loved, when someone cleared their throat behind me. I turned to find a young woman about my age, with warm brown skin and clever dark eyes, watching me with open curiosity. "So you're the famous Elena," she said. Her voice held amusement, not mockery. "I'm Mira, Rowan's daughter." I blinked. I hadn't known Rowan had a daughter. "He doesn't advertise it," Mira continued, as if reading my thoughts. "Says it makes me a target, but I've been dying to meet you." She moved closer, examining me like I was a fascinating artifact. "Is it true you broke an ancient curse with a kiss?" "I kissed him," I said carefully. "Whether that's what broke the curse, I don't know. But you did it anyway, without knowing if it would work." Mira grinned. "That's either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. I like you either way." Despite everything, I felt myself smile. Most people seem to think stupid. Most people are boring. She dropped into the chair beside me with casual grace. "So, what's it like living next to the king? Is he as terrifying up close as he seems from far away?" And just like that, I had a friend. Mira became my lifeline over the following weeks. She was everything I wasn't: confident, outspoken, completely at ease in the palace that still felt like foreign territory to me. Her mother had died in childbirth, leaving Rowan to raise her alone, and she'd grown up running wild through the palace corridors, learning to fight from the guards and politics from the council members who'd underestimated her. "They always forget I'm listening," she told me one afternoon as we walked through the gardens. "Small, female, Rowan's daughter but not officially acknowledged. I'm practically invisible. You'd be amazed what people say when they think no one important is paying attention." We'd developed a routine. Most mornings I'd wake to find her already in my sitting room, having charmed or bullied her way past my guards. We'd have breakfast together, then she'd drag me through the palace, teaching me the hidden passages and secret shortcuts, introducing me to servants who'd known her since childhood. She made the palace feel less like a prison, and more like a labyrinth I might eventually learn to navigate. But I still rarely saw Sebastian. He was drowning in royal duties, council meetings that stretched for hours, diplomatic sessions with neighboring pacts, military briefings about border tensions. When I did glimpse him, it was always from a distance, striding through corridors with advisors trailing behind, standing on balconies deep in conversation with Rowan, sitting at the head of long tables surrounded by maps and documents. He looked exhausted. The weight of the crown showed in the tightness around his eyes, the rigid set of his shoulders. Once, our eyes met across a crowded hall. He'd been listening to Magnus drone about trade agreements, and I'd been following Mira to the library. For a moment, everything else faded. The people, the noise, the obligations. Just those gold eyes finding mine, holding, and something passing between us that I still couldn't name. Then someone had called his name, and the moment shattered. "He asks about you," Mira said later, when I'd been quiet too long. "Every time he sees my father. Wants to know if you're adjusting, if you need anything, if you feel safe." "He could ask me himself," I said, trying to keep the hurt from my voice. "He could." Mira's tone was careful, "But I think he's trying to give you space. Let you settle in without the pressure of whatever this is between you two." I wanted to argue that there was nothing between us, but we both knew it would be a lie. That current of energy, that impossible awareness, it hadn't faded. If anything, it had grown stronger, like a thread pulled taut, waiting for something to snap it. 3 weeks after I'd woken him, Rowan requested my presence in his office. I went alone. Mira was visiting friends in the city, with Captain Thea trailing behind. Rowan's office was smaller than Sebastian's study, more practical, filled with weapons and training schedules instead of books and maps. "Sit," he said without preamble. "We need to talk about what I've found." My stomach knotted. "About my mother?" "About everything." He pulled out a folder, opened it to reveal pages covered in neat handwriting. "Your mother's name was Celeste Winters. She arrived in the capital 24 years ago with nothing. No family, no history, no explanation. She was young, maybe 19, and she was terrified. Terrified of what? That's the question. He tapped one of the pages. I tracked down the woman who gave her work as a seamstress. She's old now, but her memory is sharp. She said Celeste flinched at loud noises, checked over her shoulder constantly, and refused to leave the house after dark. Classic signs of someone running from something. Or someone, I said quietly. Exactly. Rowan flipped to another page. She lived quietly for 7 years. Then suddenly, she was pregnant with you. She never named the father, never mentioned him. When you were born, she became even more protective, even more paranoid. She used to tell me stories, I said, the memories surfacing unbidden, about the old magic, the ancient bloodlines, the time before the packs were organized. She said some families carried power in their blood, power that others would kill to control or destroy. Rowan leaned forward. Did she ever say she was from one of those families? No. She said... I struggled to remember. She said some stories were safer left untold, that knowing too much could be dangerous. She was protecting you. Rowan's voice was gentle, from something or someone in her past. And when she died, the fever came so fast. The words hurt even now, 8 years later. One day she was fine. The next she was burning up, delirious. She kept saying, "They can't find her," over and over. I thought she meant me. I thought she was worried about who would take care of me after she was gone. Maybe she was worried about who would find you. Rowan closed the folder. Elena, I think your mother was running from someone powerful. Someone who wanted her, or wanted you, for reasons connected to your bloodline. And I think that same someone made sure you were rejected at the matching ceremony to keep you isolated and unprotected. Dominic. The name tasted like ash. Possibly, but I haven't found proof yet. He's clever, careful. If he's involved, he's hidden his tracks well. What about the curse? Have you learned anything about how it was cast? Rowan's jaw tightened. The curse required a personal item from Sebastian. We've been inventorying everything in his chambers, checking what might be missing. 3 days ago, we found something. He pulled out a small cloth bundle, unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a single dark hair, coiled like a snake. This was hidden under a loose stone in Sebastian's bedroom, Rowan said. Preserved in wax, marked with symbols. It's the anchor for the curse. I stared at it. This tiny thing that had almost killed a king. The question is, who had access to both Sebastian's hair and his private chambers? Rowan rewrapped the hair. The list is short. Sebastian himself, me, his body servants, and Dominic, who has keys to every room in the royal wing, so we still can't prove anything. Not yet. But we're watching him. Every move, every conversation. Rowan's smile was predatory. Eventually he'll slip. They always do. I left his office feeling more unsettled than when I'd arrived. The pieces were coming together, forming a picture I didn't want to see. My mother fleeing from danger, hiding me, dying suddenly just before I came of age. My rejection at the matching ceremony, ensuring I'd be alone and vulnerable. And now, Sebastian's curse, which I'd somehow broken, marking me as something important enough to kill for. I was so lost in thought I didn't notice where I was walking until I nearly collided with someone in the corridor. I'm sorry, I looked up and froze. Sebastian stood before me, alone for once, still wearing his formal council robes. He looked as surprised as I felt. Elena. My name and his voice did strange things to my heartbeat. Are you all right? I'm fine. I wasn't watching where I was going. Neither was I. He glanced behind him, as if checking for followers, then looked back at me. Walk with me? It wasn't really a question, but he said it like one. I nodded, and we fell into step together, Captain Thea following at a discreet distance. I'm sorry I haven't had time to check on you properly, Sebastian said as we walked. The council has been demanding. Mira keeps me informed. I tried to keep my voice light. Apparently, trade negotiations are even more tedious than they sound. His lips twitched. Excruciating. Magnus can turn a simple grain shipment into a 3-hour debate about historical precedent and agricultural philosophy. I laughed before I could stop myself, and the sound seemed to surprise us both. It was the first time I'd laughed in weeks, I realized. The first time I'd felt anything close to normal. I miss it, I said quietly. Being normal, being nobody. You were never nobody. We'd reached a small courtyard I'd never seen before, tucked away behind the royal wing. Sebastian guided me to a stone bench beneath a flowering tree. Even when you thought you were. That's easy to say now. I sat, and he sat beside me, close enough that I could feel the heat of him, smell that pine and steel scent that was distinctly his. When you're not the one who spent 3 years scrubbing pots and being invisible. I've been invisible my whole life, he said, and the confession startled me, not in body, obviously, but in truth. The crown, the title, the power, that's what people see. Not me. Sebastian Thornhart, the man, stopped existing the day my father died and I became the Alpha King. I turned to look at him, really look at him. In the dappled sunlight, the harsh lines of his face softened slightly. He looked younger, more vulnerable. What was he like? I asked. Sebastian before the crown, reckless, a ghost of a smile. Rowan tells me I used to laugh more, take foolish risks, challenge anyone who looked at me sideways. I wanted to prove I was strong enough, worthy enough. I didn't understand yet that being king isn't about strength. What is it about? Sacrifice. He leaned back against the bench, tilting his face toward the sun. Every decision affects thousands of lives. Every mistake costs something you can't get back. The crown is beautiful, but it's also a cage. I understand cages, I said softly. His eyes opened, found mine. I know you do. We sat in silence for a moment, and I felt that connection between us hum like a living thing. My hand rested on the bench between us. His was inches away. I wondered what would happen if I closed that distance. If I touched him deliberately instead of by accident. Rowan told you what he found, Sebastian said. It wasn't a question. About my mother. About the curse anchor. I want you to know. Whatever your mother was running from, whatever you are, it doesn't change what you did for me. He turned toward me fully now, his body angling to face mine. You saved my life, Elena, not because of bloodlines or destiny or magic, because you're brave and compassionate, and you chose to act when everyone else had given up. I didn't feel brave, I admitted. I felt terrified and foolish, and certain I'd be laughed out of the hall. But you did it anyway. His hand moved, covered mine on the bench. The contact sent electricity racing up my arm. That's what courage is. Not the absence of fear, but action in spite of it. I couldn't breathe. His hand was warm and solid over mine, his gold eyes holding me captive. This close, I could see the silver threading through his dark hair, could count the small scars on his jaw, could feel the pull between us like gravity. Sebastian, I whispered, and saying his name felt intimate, forbidden. I've wanted to do this since you woke me, he said quietly, and his free hand came up to cup my face, his thumb brushing my cheekbone. May I? I knew what he was asking. My heart hammered so hard I thought it might break free. This was madness. We barely knew each other. There were 1,000 reasons to say no, to pull away, to remember our places. But I didn't want to be sensible. For once in my careful, invisible life, I wanted to be reckless. Yes, I breathed. He leaned in slowly, giving me time to change my mind, to retreat. But I stayed still, frozen in anticipation, as he closed the distance between us. When his lips met mine, the world exploded for the second time. But this wasn't like before, not the violent surge of breaking a curse. This was everything. A flood of warmth and want and rightness that made my toes curl and my fingers clutch at his robes. He kissed me like I was air and he'd been drowning, like I was the answer to a question he'd been asking his entire life. And I kissed him back with all the loneliness and longing I'd carried for 3 years, all the hope I'd thought was dead, all the feelings I hadn't known I was capable of. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. That, he said roughly, confirms some theories. I laughed shakily. Which ones? All of them. His thumb traced my lower lip and I shivered. Elena Winters. I think we're in trouble. What kind of trouble? The best kind. He pulled back enough to meet my eyes, and what I saw there made my breath catch. The kind that changes everything. A door slammed somewhere in the palace. Voices echoed. The world intruded on our private moment, reminding us of reality, of obligations, of the careful dance we were supposed to be doing. But as Sebastian helped me to my feet, his hand still holding mine, I realized I didn't care about supposed to. I cared about this connection, this feeling, this impossible thing growing between us. We should get back, he said reluctantly, before someone sends a search party. And then we figure this out, together. He raised my hand to his lips, pressed a kiss to my knuckles. I promise you, Elena, whatever comes next, you won't face it alone. As we walked back toward the palace, still holding hands, I felt something shift inside me. The frightened girl who'd hidden in the shadows was still there, but she was joined by someone stronger. Someone who'd kissed a king and lived to tell the tale. Someone who was beginning to believe she might deserve the miracle she'd been given. The attack came 3 nights later. I was asleep, actually asleep for the first time in weeks, dreaming of nothing in particular, when Captain Thea burst through my door with her sword already drawn. "Get up," she barked. "We're moving you now." I scrambled out of bed, my heart in my throat. "What's happening?" "Assassins in the palace. They're headed this way." She threw a cloak at me. "Put this on. We're taking you to the king's chambers. It's the most defensible position." I pulled the cloak over my nightgown with shaking hands. Through the window, I could hear shouts. The clash of steel, someone screaming. The palace had erupted into chaos. Thea grabbed my arm and hauled me into the corridor. 2 more guards flanked us immediately, forming a protective triangle as we ran. The stone floor was cold beneath my bare feet, and every shadow seemed to hide a threat. "How many?" I gasped. "At least a dozen. Professional, well-armed." Thea's voice was clipped, focused. Someone wanted to make sure they got through. We rounded a corner and nearly collided with Rowan, blood spattering his armor. My stomach lurched, but he was moving too fast to be seriously injured. "The king?" Thea demanded. "Fighting in the East Corridor. Dominic's with him." Rowan's eyes found mine. "We need her in the safe room. Now." "Dominic?" I couldn't keep the suspicion from my voice. "I know." Rowan's jaw was tight. "But we can't prove anything yet. And right now we need every sword. Move." We changed direction, heading deeper into the royal wing. The sounds of fighting grew louder, closer. I heard Sebastian's voice, sharp with command, and had to resist the urge to run toward it instead of away. The safe room was hidden behind a tapestry in Sebastian's study. Rowan pressed something on the wall, and a section of stone swung inward, revealing a small chamber lined with supplies and weapons. "Stay here," he ordered. "Don't come out until one of us gets you. If anyone else tries that door, anyone, use this." He pressed a dagger into my hand. The blade was heavier than I expected, cold and deadly. I'd never held a weapon before. I don't know how... Pointy end goes in the bad guy. Rowan's attempt at humor fell flat. "You woke a dead king, Elena. I have faith you'll figure it out." Then they were gone. The stone door swinging shut, and I was alone in the dark with my racing heart, and a dagger I didn't know how to use. Time became meaningless. I couldn't tell if minutes or hours passed. The sounds of fighting continued, sometimes near, sometimes distant, and each clash of steel made me flinch. I pressed my ear to the stone, trying to hear something, anything that would tell me what was happening. Then abruptly, silence. Not peaceful silence. The kind of silence that comes after violence, heavy with aftermath. I clutched the dagger tighter, my palms slick with sweat. Footsteps approached the study. One person, walking with purpose. The tapestry rustled. "Elena." Sebastian's voice, rough but unmistakably his. "It's me. It's safe." My legs nearly gave out from relief. I fumbled with the mechanism Rowan had used, finally got the door open. Sebastian stood there, blood on his clothes and a cut above his left eye, but alive, whole. I threw myself at him without thinking. He caught me, his arms coming around me, solid and warm and real. "You're all right." I breathed into his chest. I thought, when I heard the fighting, I'm fine. His voice rumbled through his chest, just tired of people trying to kill me. I pulled back enough to see his face. The cut was shallow, already clotting. But his eyes were hard, furious in a way I'd never seen. What happened? Assassins hired by someone with deep pockets and detailed knowledge of palace security. He released me reluctantly, stepped back. We captured 2 alive. They're being questioned now. And Dominic? Something flickered across his face. He fought well. Saved my life, actually, when one of them got past my guard. The information sat wrong in my chest. If Dominic was behind the curse, why would he save Sebastian now? Unless he knew the assassins were coming and positioned himself to look innocent, I said aloud. Sebastian's lips curved into something too sharp to be a smile. You're learning to think like royalty. That's exactly what I suspect, but proving it is another matter. He guided me back into his study, closed the hidden door behind us. The room showed signs of struggle, overturned chairs, papers scattered, a dark stain on the carpet that I tried not to look at too closely. You can't stay in the Rose Suite anymore, Sebastian said, moving to his desk. It's too exposed. Until we root out whoever is behind this, you'll stay here, in my chambers. My breath caught. Sebastian, I can't. People will talk. Let them. He turned to face me, and the intensity in his gold eyes made my protests die. I nearly lost you tonight, Elena. If those assassins had reached your room before Thea, I can't take that risk again. So I'm a prisoner now, just in a nicer cage? You're under protection. There's a difference. Is there? The fear and adrenaline were crystallizing into anger. I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't ask to break your curse or become important, or have people try to kill me. I just wanted to help. I know. He crossed to me, and his hands gripped my shoulders gently, and I would give anything to let you go back to being invisible, if that's what you truly wanted, but it's too late. You're part of this now. Part of the palace. Part of the politics. Part of... He paused, seemed to struggle with the words. Part of me. The confession hung between us, raw and honest. What does that mean? I whispered. It means Rowan was right. It means every test we've run, every theory we've explored, points to the same impossible conclusion. He took a breath. You're my true mate, Elena. The bond we feel. It's not imagination or wishful thinking. It's fate. I should have felt triumph, or vindication, or joy. Instead, I felt terror. How can you be sure? Because I've lived 32 years without feeling anything close to this. Because your touch calms the beast inside me that nothing else can reach. Because when I thought you might die tonight, something in my chest cracked open, and I understood what it would cost me to lose you. His hand slid up to cup my face. Because I'm falling in love with you, and I don't know how to stop. Tears burned my eyes. You barely know me. I know you're brave. I know you're kind. I know you see me. Sebastian, not the king. In a way no one else does. His thumbs brushed away the tears spilling down my cheeks. And I know that if you tell me you don't feel this too, I'll respect it and keep you safe and never speak of it again. But I had to tell you. I had to give you the truth. The truth. Such a simple word for something so complicated. But he was right. I did feel it. This pull, this certainty, this sense that I'd been walking toward him my entire life without knowing it. The rejected Omega and the lonely king, finding each other against all odds. I feel it, I admitted, my voice breaking. I'm terrified of it, but I feel it. His forehead dropped to rest against mine, and I felt him shaking, with relief or emotion or exhaustion, I couldn't tell. Then stay, he murmured. Not because you have to, because you want to. Be my mate, my partner, your weakness, I interrupted. That's what they'll say. That's what they'll use against you. Let them try. He pulled back to meet my eyes. You're not my weakness, Elena. You're my strength. And together we'll prove it. A knock at the door interrupted us. Rowan entered without waiting for permission, his expression grim. We got names, he said without preamble. The assassins talked. They were hired through intermediaries, but we traced it back. He paused. It was Dominic. Sebastian's face went cold. You're certain? The gold came from his personal accounts. The orders were written in his hand. We found the correspondence hidden in his chambers. Rowan's satisfaction was vicious. We have him. Where is he now? Fled. The moment he realized we were searching his rooms, he ran, took a horse, and headed for the northern border. Rowan's smile was predatory. But I sent riders ahead. They'll catch him before dawn. Sebastian moved toward the door, every line of his body promising violence. Good. I want him brought back alive. Sebastian, wait. I caught his arm. What will you do to him? He looked down at me, and I saw the Alpha King fully emerged. Cold, dangerous, absolute. He tried to kill me. He tried to kill you. He'll face justice for that. Which means execution. Yes. The single word was final. I wanted to argue. Some soft part of me recoiled from the idea of death, even for someone like Dominic, but I saw the hard truth in Sebastian's eyes. This was what it meant to be king, to make impossible choices and live with the consequences. Then I'm coming with you, I said. When you face him, when you deliver judgment, I want to be there. Elena. I'm part of this, I interrupted, throwing his own words back at him. You said so yourself. If I'm your mate, your partner, then I stand beside you. Even for the hard things, especially for the hard things. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or respect. He looked at Rowan, who shrugged. She's right, Rowan said. And honestly, having the Omega who broke the curse stand beside you when you judge the one who cast it, that's powerful symbolism. Sebastian considered, then nodded slowly. All right, but you stay close to me. No matter what happens. Always, I promised. They brought Dominic back 2 days later, in chains. The throne room was packed. Council members, nobles, guards, servants, everyone summoned to witness justice. I stood on the dais beside Sebastian's throne, wearing a dress of deep blue that Mira had insisted made me look regal. My hair was braided with silver thread, and for the first time, I felt like I belonged in this place. Dominic looked smaller in chains. His expensive clothes were torn and dirty, his face haggard. But when they forced him to his knees before the throne, his eyes found mine, and I saw hatred burning there. Dominic Ashford, Sebastian's voice rang through the hall with absolute authority. You stand accused of treason, attempted murder, and the use of dark magic against the crown. How do you answer? I answer that you're a fool, Dominic spat, blinded by some kitchen whore who... Sebastian moved so fast I barely saw it. One moment he was seated. The next he was down the dais with his hand around Dominic's throat, lifting him off his knees. Choose your next words carefully, Sebastian said softly, dangerously. They may be your last. Dominic choked, clawed at Sebastian's hand. When Sebastian released him, he crumpled to the floor, gasping. The evidence is overwhelming, Magnus announced, stepping forward with documents. Correspondence ordering the curse components, payment records for the assassins, testimony from witnesses who saw him accessing the king's chambers. He looked at Dominic with disgust. You betrayed everything our family stands for. I did what was necessary, Dominic wheezed. He's weak, distracted, obsessed with an Omega who shouldn't exist. Enough. Sebastian's command silenced him. You cursed me because you wanted power. You tried to have Elena killed because she threatened your plans, and you nearly destroyed the kingdom in your ambition. He returned to his throne, sat with the weight of centuries behind him. For these crimes, the penalty is death. Gasps rippled through the hall, even though everyone had expected it. Hearing it spoken made it real. However, Sebastian continued, and I heard the steel in his voice. I am not without mercy. Your family, Dominic. Distant, treacherous family, but family nonetheless. So I offer you a choice. The executioner's blade, swift and clean, or exile to the wastelands beyond the northern border, where you'll live or die by your own strength. Dominic stared at him, and I saw the calculation behind his eyes. The wastelands were harsh, brutal. Few survive there more than a season. But it was a chance, however slim. Exile, he said finally. I choose exile. So be it. Sebastian gestured to the guards. He leaves at dawn, and if he ever sets foot in our territory again, the sentence of death will be carried out immediately. They dragged Dominic away, still defiant, still venomous. The crowd began to disperse, voices rising in excited chatter. Sebastian reached for my hand, threaded his fingers through mine. The gesture was public, deliberate. A statement to everyone watching. Are you all right? He asked quietly. I think so. I looked up at him. Is it always like this? The judgment, the consequences? Sometimes worse. His thumb traced circles on my palm. But you handled it well. You stood strong. I had you beside me, and I beside you. He raised our joined hands, pressed a kiss to my knuckles, as it should be. That night, after the crowds had dispersed, and the palace had settled into uneasy peace, Sebastian and I stood on the balcony outside his chambers, looking out over the kingdom. What happens now? I asked. Now we announce our bonding officially. He wrapped his arm around my waist, pulled me against his side. Magnus is already drafting the proclamation. In 1 week, there will be a ceremony, public, binding, unbreakable. Your people won't accept a rejected Omega as their queen. Then they'll learn to. His voice was firm. You saved my life, Elena. You stood beside me during judgment. You've proven yourself 100 times over. Anyone who can't see that isn't worth considering. I leaned into him, breathing in that scent of pine and steel that had become home. I'm still scared. Good. So am I. He kissed the top of my head. Being scared means we understand the weight of what we're doing, but we'll carry it together. The week that followed was a whirlwind of preparations. Mira appointed herself my guide through the chaos, teaching me protocols and traditions, helping me choose ceremonial robes, coaching me through the formal phrases I'd need to speak. You're going to be amazing, she insisted the night before the ceremony. Stop worrying. I'm about to become queen, I said. I think worrying is appropriate. You became queen the moment you kissed him awake. She grinned. The ceremony is just making it official. The day of the bonding ceremony dawned clear and bright. They dressed me in white, traditional for an Omega, with gold thread woven through the fabric to represent my connection to the Alpha King. My pale hair was left loose, falling in waves down my back, crowned with a circlet of silver leaves. When I saw myself in the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked regal, composed, certain, everything I'd never been. You ready? Thea asked gently. I took a breath, thought about the girl I'd been, rejected, invisible, afraid. Thought about the woman I was becoming, brave, loved, powerful. Not in spite of my softness, but because of it. Yes, I said. I'm ready. The ceremony took place in the great hall where I'd first woken Sebastian. The space had been transformed, flowers everywhere, candles burning, the whole kingdom seemingly crammed inside to witness. Sebastian waited at the altar, dressed in formal robes of black and gold. When he saw me begin my walk down the aisle, his expression cracked, just for a moment, showing the emotion beneath the royal mask. I met his eyes and held them. Each step brought me closer, brought me home. When I reached him, he took my hands in his, and that current passed between us. Stronger now, perfected, complete. The ceremony words were ancient, spoken in the old language. We made our vows, exchanged our promises, and when the priest finally declared us bound, true mates, confirmed and consecrated, Sebastian kissed me with a tenderness that made the crowd erupt in cheers. My queen, he murmured against my lips. My king, I whispered back, and I meant it. Not because of his title or his power, but because of who he was beneath all of it. The man who'd seen me when I was invisible. The man who'd made me believe I was worth saving. That night, after the celebrations had wound down and we'd finally escaped to the privacy of our chambers, Sebastian pulled me close. Do you regret it? He asked. Giving up your quiet life for this chaos? I thought about it honestly. The kitchen had been safe, simple, invisible. This new life was complicated, dangerous, constantly exposed, but it was also real. full of purpose and connection and love I'd never imagined possible. No regrets, I said firmly. This, us, it's everything I didn't know I needed. Good. He kissed my forehead, my cheeks, my lips. Because I plan to spend the rest of our lives proving you made the right choice. And he did. The months that followed brought challenges. Political opposition, border tensions, the constant learning curve of being queen. But Sebastian was always beside me, steady and strong, reminding me that I belonged. Mira became my closest advisor, using her invisibility to gather intelligence and protect our interests. Rowan trained me in diplomacy and strategy, teaching me to navigate the treacherous waters of court politics, and slowly, the kingdom accepted me. The story of the rejected Omega who'd woken the dead king became legend, told around fires and passed down through generations. But more than that, they saw me work, saw me fight for their interests, saw me stand strong beside their king, saw me prove day after day that strength came in many forms. A year after the bonding ceremony, I stood once again on the balcony, watching dawn break over the kingdom. But this time, I wasn't alone. Sebastian's arms wrapped around me from behind, his hand resting on my growing belly where our child, proof of our impossible bond, grew stronger each day. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That I never imagined this," I said honestly. "That night when I kissed you, I thought I was saying goodbye to the only extraordinary thing I'd ever do. I thought I'd go back to the kitchens and everything would stay the same forever. And now? Now I know that sometimes the smallest act of courage can change everything, that being rejected doesn't mean being unworthy, that true mates aren't found. They're forged through choice and trust and love." He tightened his arms around me. "You saved me, Elena. In every way a person can be saved." "No," I corrected gently, turning in his embrace to face him. "We saved each other. And there, as the sun rose over our kingdom, as our child moved beneath my heart, as my true mate held me close, I finally understood what my mother had been protecting all those years ago. Not just my life, but my destiny. The chance to become exactly who I was meant to be, not despite being rejected, but because of everything that came after.